The obsidian room didn't smell like food. It smelled like money. It was a scent composed of aged mahogany, pressed linen, expensive perfume, and the faint metallic tang of fear. Sarah Jenkins adjusted her bow tie in the employee locker room mirror, her hands trembling just enough to be annoying. She pressed her palms against the cool glass. "Get it together, Sarah," she whispered. "Rent is due on Tuesday. The eviction notice is already in the mail. You need this." Sarah wasn't supposed to be working at a place like the Obsidian. She was a nursing student who had dropped out 2 semesters shy of graduation when her father, Robert, had his stroke. The medical bills had eaten their savings, then their credit, and finally, their hope. Now, she was a waitress with a fake resume, claiming she had experience in fine dining, hoping no one would notice she didn't know the difference between a Pinot Noir and a Merlot. "New girl!" The voice snapped like a whip. Sarah spun around to see Pierre, the floor manager. Pierre was a short, perspiring man who looked like he was constantly on the verge of a cardiac event. "Yes, Pierre?" "Table 9, Pierre said, his face pale. "Chad called out sick. He saw the reservation list and suddenly developed a migraine. You're taking it?" The locker room went silent. 2 other servers, a tall blonde woman named Jessica and a veteran waiter named Tom, stopped what they were doing and looked at Sarah with genuine pity. "Table 9, Sarah asked, confused. "Is that a VIP?" "It's Arthur Sterling," Jessica whispered, as if saying the name would summon a demon. "Sarah, listen to me. Do not speak unless spoken to. Do not make eye contact for more than 2 seconds. And for the love of God, do not ask him how his day was." "He's just a customer, right?" Sarah tried to laugh, but it came out dry. "He's a monster," Tom said, closing his locker with a slam. "Last month, he made a busboy cry because the ice cubes in his water were too cloudy. He poured the water onto the floor and made the kid clean it up with his own napkin while the whole restaurant watched. If you mess up, Pierre will fire you. He has to. Sterling is an investor. He owns a stake in the building." Sarah felt a cold knot form in her stomach. She couldn't get fired. If she lost this job, her dad's physical therapy sessions would stop. "I can handle him," Sarah said, lifting her chin. It was a lie, but she was good at those lately. At 7 p.m. sharp, the heavy oak doors of the obsidian room swung open. The atmosphere in the restaurant shifted instantly. Conversation died down. The air grew heavier. Arthur Sterling entered. He was in a wheelchair, pushed by a silent, hulking bodyguard in a black suit. Arthur looked to be in his late 70s, but his eyes were sharp, blue, and terrifyingly alert. He wore a charcoal 3-piece suit that cost more than Sarah's entire life earnings. His face was gaunt, his skin like parchment paper, but his expression was one of absolute, sneering contempt. Pierre rushed forward, bowing low. "Mr. Sterling, welcome back. We have your table ready." Arthur didn't even look at him. He simply waved a hand, a gesture of dismissal, so casual it was insulting. The bodyguard pushed him past the trembling manager toward the corner booth, table 9. Sarah stood at the service station, gripping her tray. "Go!" Pierre hissed in her ear. "Water, sparkling, room temperature, no ice, and cut the lemon into exactly 4 wedges. If you bring 3, don't bother coming back to the kitchen." Sarah took a deep breath. She walked across the plush carpet, feeling the eyes of every other staff member boring into her back. They were waiting for the car crash. They were waiting for the slaughter. She reached the table. The bodyguard stepped back into the shadows. Arthur Sterling sat there, staring at the tablecloth, drumming his fingers. "Good evening, Mr. Sterling," Sarah said, her voice steady. "My name is Sarah, and I'll be taking care of you tonight." Arthur stopped drumming. He slowly lifted his head. He looked at her name tag, then up at her face. His eyes narrowed, scanning her like he was looking for a crack in a windshield. "No," he rasped. His voice sounded like gravel grinding together. "They sent me a sacrificial lamb." "I assure you, sir, I'm quite capable," Sarah said, placing the water glass down. Arthur stared at the glass. Then, with a sudden, violent motion, he backhanded the glass off the table. Crash! Crystal shattered against the expensive floor, water soaked into the carpet and splattered onto Sarah's shoes. The entire restaurant went silent. "You call that room temperature?" Arthur shouted, his voice booming through the dining hall. "That water is at least 60 degrees. I asked for room temperature. Are you incompetent or are you just stupid?" Sarah stood frozen. Her shoes were wet. Her heart was hammering against her ribs. Pierre was already running over, looking terrified. "Mr. Sterling, I am so sorry," Pierre stammered. "She's new. Get on your knees," Arthur said, pointing a shaking finger at Sarah. Sarah blinked. "Excuse me." "Pick up the glass," Arthur sneered. "On your knees. Pick up every shard. Now." Sarah looked at the shattered glass. Then she looked at Arthur Sterling. She saw the cruelty in his eyes, but beneath that, she saw something else. Something frantic. He was breathing hard, clutching the armrest of his wheelchair with a white-knuckled grip. She thought of her rent. She thought of her father. Sarah slowly lowered herself to one knee. She began to pick up the large pieces of glass. "That's it," Arthur hissed, leaning over the table, watching her like a hawk. "Learn your place, girl. You are nothing. You are a servant. You exist to fetch." Sarah's hand slipped on a wet shard. It sliced her thumb. A drop of bright red blood welled up. She flinched, but she didn't cry out. She finished clearing the glass, stood up, and wrapped a napkin around her hand. "I will bring you a fresh glass, Mr. Sterling," she said. Her voice was ice cold. "And I will make sure the temperature is correct." She turned and walked away. She didn't run. She didn't cry. As she entered the kitchen, she heard Arthur Sterling laugh. It was a dry, hacking sound. "She won't last an hour," Arthur said to the empty air. But he was wrong. Sarah wasn't going anywhere. "You're bleeding," Jessica whispered, as Sarah slammed through the kitchen doors. "I'm fine," Sarah snapped, grabbing the first aid kit from the wall. She wrapped her thumb tightly in a bandage and pulled a fresh latex glove over it. "Sarah, just walk out," Tom urged, leaning against the prep counter. "Pierre will understand. That man is a psychopath. Last year, he threw a plate of risotto at a girl because it was too yellow. He's not worth the minimum wage." "It's not about the wage," Sarah muttered, though it entirely was. "He wants me to quit. He gets off on it. I'm not giving him the satisfaction." She grabbed a thermometer from the chef's station. "Chef, I need a sparkling water. Exactly 72 degrees Fahrenheit. I'm measuring it." The head chef, a gruff man named Gordon who usually yelled at everyone, looked at Sarah with a strange respect. He nodded. "Check the bottle in the pantry, top shelf. It's usually warmer up there." Sarah returned to the table with the water. She poured it. Arthur watched her, his eyes tracking the liquid. He took a sip. He paused. He swallowed. He didn't say thank you. He just grunted. "Menu." She handed it to him. "I don't need to read it," he said, tossing it aside. "I want the Wagyu ribeye, rare. But listen to me closely, you uneducated little girl. I want it seared for exactly 45 seconds on each side. No salt, no pepper. And I want it served with asparagus that has been peeled. If I see a single string of fiber on that asparagus, I will have your job. 45 seconds. Peeled asparagus. No seasoning," Sarah repeated, writing it down. And, Arthur added, leaning in, his voice dropping to a whisper, if the chef uses the oil from the canister on the left, send it back. I want the olive oil from the private reserve in the darker green bottle. If you try to trick me, I'll know. Sarah stared at him. How could he possibly know which oil they used? Understood, sir. Back in the kitchen, Chef Gordon looked at the ticket and swore. He's in a mood tonight. The private reserve? I haven't opened that bottle in 3 months. Just do it, chef, Sarah said. Please. 20 minutes later, the plate was ready. It was a masterpiece of meat. Sarah checked the asparagus herself. It was peeled perfectly smooth. She walked it out. The restaurant was full now, but table 9 felt like an island of isolation. No one sat at the tables immediately surrounding it. She placed the plate down. Your Wagyu, sir. Arthur picked up his knife and fork. His hands shook slightly, a tremor he tried to hide by gripping the utensils harder. He cut a small piece of meat. He inspected the inside. It was red, glistening. He put it in his mouth. He chewed slowly. Sarah held her breath. Arthur spat the meat into his napkin. Garbage, he shouted. He shoved the plate away so hard it slid across the table and nearly fell off the edge. I said 45 seconds. This was seared for 50. It's rubber. It's inedible. Pierre was already rushing over. Mr. Sterling, please. This girl is incompetent, Arthur roared, his face turning red. She's trying to poison me with this swill. Get her out of my sight. Fire her. Now. Pierre looked at Sarah, his eyes pleading. Sarah, maybe you should go to the back. Something in Sarah snapped. She didn't retreat. She stepped forward. She placed both hands flat on the table, leaning down so she was eye level with the millionaire. Mr. Sterling, she said, her voice loud enough to carry to the nearby tables. Arthur stopped shouting. He looked shocked that she was this close. That steak was cooked to your exact specifications, Sarah said, her voice trembling with suppressed rage but clear as a bell. I watched the chef time it. I watched him pour the oil. You are not angry about the steak. You are not angry about the water. Excuse me, Arthur sputtered. You insolent. You are lonely, Sarah cut him off. You are miserable, and you are in pain, and you treat people like dirt because it's the only way you can feel powerful in that chair. You want me to quit? You want me to cry? I won't. My father is sick. I have bills to pay, and I need this job more than you need to be a bully. So eat your steak, or don't. But do not lie and say it wasn't cooked perfectly. The silence in the restaurant was absolute. You could hear a pin drop. Pierre looked like he was about to faint. The bodyguard in the shadows actually took a step forward, his hand moving to his jacket. Arthur Sterling stared at Sarah. His mouth hung open slightly. For the first time, the sneer was gone, replaced by pure, unadulterated shock. He looked at the steak. Then he looked at Sarah. A slow, strange smile spread across his face. It wasn't a nice smile, but it was a genuine one. You have a sick father? He asked quietly. Yes, Sarah said, standing up straight. And you need the money? Desperately. Arthur picked up his fork again. He took another bite of the steak, the same piece he had just screamed about. He chewed it, swallowed it. It's a little overcooked, he mumbled, but I suppose it's edible. He waved his hand. Refill my water. And stop hovering. Pierre let out a breath that sounded like a deflating tire. Sarah's legs felt like jelly, but she nodded. Yes, sir. She had survived. But as she poured the water, she noticed something. Arthur had placed his cell phone on the table. The screen lit up with a text message. Sarah glanced at it involuntarily. The text was from a contact named the Vulture. The message read, Did she take the bait? Is she gone yet? We need a server who works for US, not the restaurant. Fix this. Sarah froze. Take the bait? Arthur saw her looking. He snatched the phone and flipped it over. His eyes darted to hers, and for a second the arrogance was gone. In its place was fear. Get away from me, he whispered, his voice shaking. If you know what's good for you, girl, you'll quit tonight, before they come. Sarah didn't quit. She finished the shift, her mind racing. The vulture? Bait? What was going on at table 9? At the end of the night, the bill came to $450. Arthur Sterling signed the receipt with a shaky hand. He left no tip, not a single cent. He drew a line through the gratuity section. Classic Sterling, Chad, the waiter who had called in sick, but miraculously recovered enough to come pick up his paycheck, sneered as he looked at the receipt. Told you, he's a miser. He abuses you for 3 hours and leaves you with nothing. Sarah looked at the receipt. Arthur had pressed so hard with the pen that the paper was nearly torn. As she was folding the merchant copy, she noticed something on the back. There was faint writing. It wasn't ink. It was an indentation, as if he had written on the top copy and the pressure had transferred through. She held it up to the light. It was a phone number, and below it, 3 words. Don't trust Pierre. Sarah looked across the empty dining room. Pierre was in his office, counting the cash drawer. He was on the phone, speaking in hushed, rapid French. He looked up, saw Sarah watching him, and abruptly hung up. He smiled a fake, plastic smile. Good job tonight, Sarah, Pierre called out. You survived. Most don't. Thanks, Pierre, Sarah said, clutching the receipt in her pocket. She walked out into the cold Chicago night. The wind off Lake Michigan whipped her hair across her face. She needed to get home to her brother, Leo, who was watching their dad. As she walked toward the bus stop, a black SUV rolled slowly alongside her. The window rolled down. It was the bodyguard, the massive man who pushed Arthur's wheelchair. Up close, he had a scar running through his left eyebrow. Miss Jenkins, the bodyguard said. His voice was deep, like thunder. Sarah stepped back, gripping her pepper spray in her pocket. What do you want? Mr. Sterling forgot something, the man said. He extended a hand out the window. He was holding a thick, white envelope. He doesn't tip, Sarah said suspiciously. It's not a tip, the bodyguard said. It's a retainer. A what? Take it. Sarah hesitated, then reached out and took the envelope. The SUV sped off instantly, disappearing into the traffic of Michigan Avenue. Sarah ducked into a 24-hour pharmacy to get out of the wind. With shaking hands, she opened the envelope. Inside was a stack of cash, $50 bills. She counted them quickly. $5,000. It was enough to pay the back rent and 2 months of her dad's therapy. There was a note clipped to the money. It was written in the same shaky handwriting as the receipt. This is for your silence. Tomorrow night I will request you again. You will serve me. You will be rude to me. You will make a scene. But you must watch my wine. Do not let Pierre pour it. If you want to keep your father alive, you will help me stay alive. A.S. Sarah leaned against the shelf of vitamins, her heart pounding in her ears. Arthur Sterling wasn't just a rude old man. He was a target, and he was acting like a monster to keep people at a distance, probably because the people closest to him were the ones trying to kill him. And Pierre? The nervous, sweaty manager? Sarah thought about the text message. We need a server who works for US. They wanted Sarah fired. That's why Arthur had screamed about the steak. He was trying to get her fired so she would be safe. But when she stood up to him, when she showed she had a spine, he decided to recruit her instead. She looked at the money. Then she looked at her phone. She dialed the number on the back of the receipt. It rang once. "Who is this?" Arthur's voice rasped. He sounded weaker than he had in the restaurant. "It's the girl who knows how to peel asparagus," Sarah said. There was a long pause. "You shouldn't have called," Arthur said. "They are listening." "Who is the vulture?" Sarah asked. "My son," Arthur whispered, "and tomorrow he's coming to dinner." The following evening, the obsidian room felt less like a restaurant and more like a courtroom waiting for a verdict. The air was thick. Pierre was sweating more than usual. He had changed his shirt twice before service even started. "He's bringing a guest," Pierre muttered, pacing near the host stand. He wiped his forehead with a handkerchief. "Mr. Sterling never brings guests. Sarah, you are on table 9 again. I want everything perfect. If tonight goes wrong, the owners will have my head." "I thought you wanted me fired," Sarah said, testing him. Pierre froze. His eyes darted to hers, wide and panicked. I want what is best for the restaurant. Just do your job." At 7:30 p.m. the doors opened. Arthur Sterling rolled in, looking even more frail than the night before. His skin was a waxen grey. But behind him, walking with the stride of a man who already owned the place, was the vulture. His real name was Lucas Sterling. He was 40 years old, handsome in a shark-like way, with perfectly gelled hair and a smile that didn't reach his eyes. He wore a navy suit that was tailored to perfection, and he greeted the staff with a warmth that felt practiced. "Good evening, Pierre," Lucas boomed, shaking the trembling manager's hand. "How is business? My father tells me the service has been slipping lately." "We are doing our best, Mr. Lucas," Pierre squeaked. "I'm sure you are." Lucas's eyes scanned the room and landed on Sarah. He paused. "And who is this?" "This is Sarah," Pierre said quickly. "She's new." Lucas walked up to Sarah. He stood too close, invading her personal space. He smelled of expensive cologne and mints. "Sarah," Lucas said, his voice silky. "My father is a difficult man. I apologize in advance for anything he says to you. He's losing his faculties. It's hard for the family to watch." Sarah looked at Arthur. The old man was staring straight ahead, his jaw set in a grim line. He wasn't losing his faculties. He was terrified. "I can handle him, sir," Sarah said. "I hope so," Lucas smiled. "For your sake." They sat at table 9. The dynamic was immediately unsettling. Lucas played the role of the doting son, adjusting Arthur's napkin, pouring his water, speaking loudly as if Arthur were deaf. "Dad, I ordered that Pinot you like," Lucas said. "The 1998. "I hate Pinot," Arthur growled. "I drink Cabernet." Lucas laughed, looking around at the nearby tables to make sure they saw his patience. "Oh, Dad, you always loved Pinot. Your memory really is going." He looked at Sarah and winked. "Just bring the Pinot, and have Pierre decant it personally. We want to let it breathe." Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. Pierre. Personally. She went to the service bar. Pierre was already there, holding a dusty bottle of wine. His hands were shaking so badly the bottle clinked against the glass decanter. "I'll take that, Pierre," Sarah said, reaching for the decanter. "No!" Pierre snapped, pulling it away. "Mr. Lucas requested I do it. It's a ceremonial thing. Go check on table 4. "Pierre," Sarah said, stepping closer. "Why are you sweating?" "It's hot in here," Pierre hissed. He finished pouring the wine into the crystal decanter. He swirled it. Sarah watched him. She didn't see him drop anything in, but she knew. She just knew. The look in his eyes wasn't just stress. It was guilt. Pierre placed the decanter on Sarah's tray. "Take it to them. Pour the son first, then the father. Do not mix it up." Sarah lifted the tray. It felt heavy, like she was carrying a loaded gun. She walked back to table 9. Lucas was leaning in, whispering something to Arthur. Arthur looked pale. As Sarah approached, Lucas sat back and beamed. "Ah, finally," Lucas said. "Pour, my dear." Sarah uncorked the decanter. She poured a glass for Lucas. He swirled it, sniffed it, and took a sip. "Exquisite," Lucas said. "Now, for my father." Sarah moved to Arthur's side. She lifted the decanter. Arthur looked up at her. His eyes were pleading. "Do not let me drink this." But Lucas was watching like a hawk. If she didn't pour it, he would know she was compromised. If she did pour it and Arthur refused, Lucas would know Arthur was on to him. She had to make a choice. Sarah tilted the decanter. The red liquid flowed toward the glass. Then she tripped. It was a calculated stumble. She caught her heel on the leg of the table and lurched forward. The decanter flew from her hand. Splash! A wave of red wine hit Lucas Sterling square in the chest. It soaked his expensive white shirt, his navy suit, and splashed across his face. The glass decanter shattered on the table, sending shards everywhere. "Oh my God!" Sarah screamed, putting her hands over her mouth. "I am so sorry." Lucas jumped up, his chair scraping loudly against the floor. "You stupid cow!" he roared, the mask of the nice guy dropping instantly. "Look what you've done. This is a $5,000 suit." "I slipped. I'm so sorry," Sarah cried, grabbing napkins and frantically trying to dab his chest, making the stain worse. Pierre came running, looking like he was about to have a heart attack. "Mr. Lucas! Mr. Lucas! Oh no! Oh no!" But amidst the chaos, Sarah looked at Arthur. Arthur Sterling wasn't looking at his angry son. He was looking at the puddle of wine on the tablecloth. He dipped his finger into it, then subtly wiped it on a napkin and shoved the napkin into his pocket. Then Arthur looked at Sarah. He winked. "You clumsy idiot!" Arthur suddenly shouted, joining the performance. "Get out of my sight! You've ruined dinner! You've ruined everything!" "I want her fired!" Lucas screamed, wiping wine from his eyes. "Pierre, get this trash out of here immediately!" "You're fired!" Pierre yelled at Sarah, his voice cracking. "Get your things and go, now!" Sarah backed away, acting devastated. "Please, I need this job." "Go!" Lucas bellowed. Sarah turned and ran toward the kitchen, but as she pushed through the swinging doors, her heart was soaring. She had saved him. The wine was on the floor, not in his stomach. But now, she was fired, and she was dangerous. Sarah didn't leave the restaurant immediately. She went to the locker room, her hands shaking as she changed out of her uniform. She had played her part perfectly, but the game had changed. She wasn't just a witness anymore. She was an active participant. She threw her apron into the bin and grabbed her bag. As she did, her phone buzzed. It was a text from an unknown number. "Meet me at the back alley entrance. 5 minutes. Bring the napkin." Sarah frowned. The napkin? She didn't have a napkin. Arthur had put the wine-soaked napkin in his pocket. Wait. She checked her apron pocket before fully discarding it. Tucked deep inside the fold, where she kept her wine key, was a crumpled cocktail napkin. She hadn't put it there. Arthur must have slipped it into her apron pocket during the chaos of the spill, when she was leaning over the table. The man was faster than he looked. She unfolded it. Inside was a small, silver key, and a hastily scrawled address, 1402 Oak Street, basement, box 4. Sarah shoved the key into her bra. She threw her coat on and slipped out the back exit of the kitchen, bypassing Pierre's office, where Lucas was currently screaming at the staff. The alley was dark, smelling of wet cardboard and grease. Sarah hugged her coat tighter. A black sedan was waiting, idling quietly. The window rolled down. It wasn't Arthur. It was the bodyguard, the man with the scar. "Get in," he said. "Where is Arthur?" Sarah asked, not moving. "Mr. Sterling is being taken home by his son. He is in grave danger," the bodyguard said. "My name is Marcus. I work for Arthur, not the family. He told me you have the key." "I don't know what you're talking about," Sarah lied. She gripped the pepper spray in her pocket. Marcus sighed. "Sarah, listen to me. The wine was poisoned with digoxin. It mimics heart failure. If he had drunk that glass, he would have been dead by morning, and everyone would have blamed his old age. Lucas wants the inheritance before the new will is finalized." "New will? That's what the key is for," Marcus said. "Arthur rewrote his will 3 days ago. He cut Lucas out. He left everything to a charity trust. But the lawyer hasn't filed it yet, because Lucas paid the lawyer off to delay it. The only physical copy of the signed will is in that safety box. If Lucas finds it, he burns it. If Arthur dies before it's filed, the old will stands, and Lucas gets everything." Sarah's breath hitched. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because," Marcus looked at her grimly, "Arthur trusts you. You're the only person in 2 years who didn't want anything from him. Now get in. We have to get that will before Lucas realizes Arthur didn't drink the wine." Sarah got in the car. As they sped through the Chicago streets, Sarah's phone rang. It was her brother, Leo. "Sarah!" Leo's voice was panicked. "Leo, what's wrong?" "Someone is at the apartment," Leo whispered. 2 guys. They're banging on the door. They say they're police, but they aren't in uniform. They're shouting your name." Sarah's blood ran cold. Lucas wasn't just firing her. He was tying up loose ends. "Leo, listen to me," Sarah said, her voice steady despite the terror gripping her. "Do not open the door. Take Dad, go out the fire escape, and go to Mrs. Higgins's apartment downstairs. Do it now." "Sarah, what did you do?" "I'll explain later. Just run." She hung up and turned to Marcus. "They're at my house. My dad and brother are there." Marcus's face hardened. He spun the steering wheel, drifting the heavy sedan around a corner. "Change of plans. We get your family first. Then we get the will." "And Arthur?" Sarah asked. "Arthur is on his own for the next hour," Marcus said. "He's a tough old bastard. He just has to survive dinner." The ride to Sarah's apartment was a blur of neon lights and adrenaline. Marcus drove like a stuntman, weaving through traffic. When they pulled up to her building, a rundown brick tenement in the south side, Sarah saw a black SUV parked out front. "Stay in the car," Marcus commanded. He reached under his seat and pulled out a tire iron. He didn't have a gun, but he looked like he didn't need one. "No way," Sarah said, jumping out. They ran into the lobby. The elevator was broken, as usual. They sprinted up the 3 flights of stairs. When they reached the 3rd floor, Sarah saw them. 2 men in leather jackets were kicking at her door. The wood was splintering. "Hey!" Marcus bellowed. The men turned. They were big, but Marcus was a giant. He charged them like a linebacker. He tackled the first man, sending him crashing into the hallway wall. The second man pulled a knife. Sarah didn't think. She grabbed a fire extinguisher from the wall bracket and swung it with all her might. It connected with the knife man's shoulder. He howled in pain and dropped the blade. Marcus finished the first guy with a heavy punch to the jaw, then grabbed the second guy by the collar and threw him down the stairs. They tumbled down, cursing. "Leo!" Sarah screamed, banging on her own door. "It's me!" The door opened. Leo, a skinny 19-year-old with messy hair, stood there holding a baseball bat. Behind him, in the living room, their father Robert was sitting in his wheelchair, looking confused and frightened. "Pack a bag," Marcus ordered, stepping into the apartment and locking the damaged door. "Essentials only. Meds for your father. Documents. You have 3 minutes before those guys come back, with friends." "Who is this?" Leo asked, eyeing Marcus. "He's a friend," Sarah said, rushing to her father's room to grab his insulin and heart medication. "We have to go, Dad." "Sarah, what kind of trouble are you in?" her father asked, his voice slurred from the stroke. "I helped a man who didn't deserve it, Dad," Sarah said, kissing his forehead. "And now we have to finish it." 5 minutes later, they were all in Marcus's car. They drove to a motel on the outskirts of the city, a place with flickering lights and no questions asked. "You stay here," Marcus told Leo and Robert. "Do not leave this room. Do not order pizza. Do not turn on your phones. I'll be back." He turned to Sarah. "Now, we get the will." "And then?" Sarah asked. "Then we crash a party," Marcus said. "Lucas is hosting a gala tonight at the Sterling estate. He thinks he's celebrating his inheritance. He thinks his father is dying in his bedroom upstairs." "Is he?" "If we don't get there in time," Marcus said, checking his watch, "Lucas might get impatient and use a pillow." They drove to 1402 Oak Street. It was a private storage facility for the ultra-wealthy, the kind of place that required a thumbprint and a retina scan. "I can't get in," Marcus said. "I'm security, but not for this. Only family, or the key holder." Sarah clutched the silver key. "Arthur gave it to me." She walked up to the scanner. She didn't have a retina match, but there was a manual override keyhole. She inserted the silver key. Click. A keypad lit up. "Code?" Sarah whispered. She thought back to the receipt, the phone number. The last 4 digits were 0909. She typed it in. Access denied. "Damn it," she hissed. She tried Arthur's table number. 009. Access denied. "Think, Sarah," Marcus urged from the car. "What matters to him?" She closed her eyes. She thought about the man who screamed about temperature and peeled asparagus. The man who was so particular about time. "I want it seared for exactly 45 seconds. She typed 0045. Access granted. The heavy door hissed open. Sarah ran inside. Box 4 was near the floor. She unlocked it with the silver key. Inside there was no gold, no jewelry, just a single manila envelope. She ripped it open. It was the last will and testament of Arthur James Sterling. Dated 3 days ago, it revoked all previous wills. It named Lucas Sterling as a beneficiary of exactly $1,000. The rest, the estate, the business, the assets, went to the Sterling Foundation for stroke recovery. And the executor of the will? Sarah gasped. The executor wasn't a lawyer. It wasn't a banker. The name on the line was Sarah Jenkins. "He didn't just trust me," Sarah whispered, staring at the paper. "He put me in charge." She ran back to the car. "I got it." "Good," Marcus said, revving the engine. "Because I just got a text from the night nurse at the estate. She's on our side. She says Lucas just dismissed the staff and went into Arthur's room alone." "Drive," Sarah said. "Fast." The Sterling estate sat on a cliff overlooking Lake Michigan, a sprawling Gothic mansion that looked like it belonged in a ghost story. Tonight, however, it was ablaze with light. Expensive cars lined the driveway. Bentleys, Rolls-Royces, Ferraris. The elite of Chicago were inside, drinking champagne, unaware that a murder was being attempted upstairs. Marcus didn't drive to the front gate. He drove the battered sedan through a service road that cut through the woods. "There's a side entrance for the catering staff," Marcus said, killing the headlights as they approached the rear of the property. "I have a key card. But once we're inside, we have to move fast. Lucas has private security, ex-military types. They won't hesitate to hurt you." "I don't care," Sarah said, clutching the manila envelope against her chest. "Just get me to Arthur." They parked behind a row of dumpsters. Marcus led the way, moving with surprising silence for a man of his size. He swiped a card at the service door. It clicked open. They entered the kitchen. It was chaotic. Dozens of chefs were plating hors d'oeuvres. Waiters were rushing in and out with trays of champagne. "Hey, you can't be back here," a sous chef shouted, pointing a ladle at them. Marcus didn't stop. He simply flashed a badge that Sarah hadn't seen before. "Private security, emergency protocol, clear the path." The chef backed down. Sarah followed Marcus into the main hallway. The noise of the party hit them, a wall of string quartet music and polite laughter. "The master suite is on the second floor, East Wing," Marcus whispered. "The grand staircase is the only way up, but it's right in the middle of the party." "I'll cause a distraction," Sarah said. "How?" Sarah spotted a waiter carrying a tower of champagne glasses. She didn't hesitate. She ran straight into him. Crash! 300 crystal glasses hit the marble floor. Champagne exploded everywhere. The sound was like a gunshot. The music stopped. The chatter ceased. Every single head in the ballroom turned toward the disaster. "Oh my God!" Sarah screamed, playing the clumsy waitress one last time. Security guards rushed toward her. "Ma'am, stay right there." "Go," Sarah mouthed to Marcus, but Marcus grabbed her arm. "No, we go together." Taking advantage of the confusion, Marcus dragged Sarah through the crowd, shoving guests aside. They hit the stairs before security could intercept them. "Stop them!" a voice boomed. It was Pierre, the restaurant manager. He was catering the event. "That's the girl, the one who was fired." Two large security guards started up the stairs after them. Marcus stopped on the landing. He turned to Sarah. "Go to the room," Marcus said, cracking his knuckles. "I'll hold the door." "Marcus, go!" Sarah kicked off her heels and sprinted up the hallway. Behind her, she heard the sickening sound of a fist hitting flesh and the grunt of men colliding. She didn't look back. She reached the double oak doors at the end of the hall. The master suite. She tried the handle. Locked. "Arthur!" she screamed, pounding on the wood. "Arthur!" Inside, she heard a muffled noise, a struggle. Sarah looked around frantically. There was a heavy antique vase on a pedestal next to the door. She grabbed it. It must have weighed 20 pounds. With a primal scream, she swung it against the door handle. The brass lock shattered. The door swung open. Sarah stumbled into the room. The scene before her froze her blood. Arthur Sterling was lying in a hospital bed, set up in the center of the room. He was conscious but paralyzed, his eyes wide with terror. Standing over him was Lucas Sterling. He held a syringe in one hand. He wasn't injecting Arthur. He was injecting the IV bag hanging next to the bed. "Lucas!" Sarah screamed. Lucas spun around. He looked deranged, his hair messy, his tie undone. When he saw Sarah, he laughed. It was a breathless, manic sound. "You," Lucas sneered. "The waitress. You really are like a cockroach. You just won't go away." "Step away from him," Sarah said, holding the envelope up like a shield. "Or what?" Lucas asked, turning back to the IV bag. He pushed the plunger. The clear liquid began to mix with the saline, dripping slowly down the tube toward Arthur's arm. "You'll refill my water. You're nobody, Sarah. You're a servant." "I'm the executor of his estate," Sarah announced, her voice trembling but loud. Lucas froze. His hand hovered over the IV line. "What did you say?" "I have the will," Sarah said, stepping closer. "The new one. Signed 3 days ago. You get nothing, Lucas. $1. That's it." Lucas's face went pale. "You're lying." "Check box 4, Sarah challenged. "Oh wait, you can't, because I emptied it." She tossed the manila envelope onto the floor between them. "It's over. If Arthur dies, The police will see the autopsy. They'll see the digoxin. And since you have no inheritance, you'll have no money for lawyers. You'll go to prison for the rest of your life as a poor man." Lucas looked at the envelope. Then he looked at the IV bag. The poison was inches from Arthur's vein. "If he dies," Lucas whispered, "I can still burn that will before the police get here. And then the old will stand." "No!" Sarah lunged. Lucas was faster. He pulled a small pistol from his waistband, a sleek, silver gun. He aimed it at Sarah's chest. "Stop!" he screamed. Sarah froze. She was 5 feet away from him. "You are going to watch him die," Lucas hissed, his eyes wild. "And then I'm going to kill you and claim you broke in and did it yourself. A disgruntled employee taking revenge. Perfect narrative." Arthur made a choking sound. The poison was entering his arm. "Dad, shh," Lucas said soothingly, not looking at him. "It'll be over soon." "Sarah," Arthur wheezed. Sarah looked at the old man. Then she looked at the gun. She realized something. Lucas was a coward. He was shaking. He had never worked a day in his life. He had never faced a real problem. Sarah had faced eviction. She had faced hunger. She had faced the death of her mother and the illness of her father. She had faced Arthur Sterling at his worst. She wasn't afraid of a rich boy with a toy. "You won't shoot me," Sarah said, taking a step forward. "I will," Lucas shouted, his hand trembling. "No, you won't, because the gunshot will bring the police upstairs instantly," Sarah said, taking another step. "And you haven't burned the will yet." "Stay back." "You're pathetic," Sarah spat. She channeled every ounce of Arthur's own attitude. "Look at you. You can't even kill your own father like a man. You have to use poison." "Shut up!" Lucas screamed. He turned his head for a split second to look at the door. That was all Sarah needed. She grabbed the heavy IV pole stand. She didn't swing it at Lucas. She swung it at the IV bag. Smash! The bag burst. Fluid sprayed everywhere. Over the bed, over Arthur, over Lucas. The line ripped out of Arthur's arm, spraying blood and saline. Lucas fired the gun in panic. Bang! The bullet shattered the window behind Sarah. Before he could fire again, a massive shape filled the doorway. Marcus. He was bleeding from a cut on his forehead, his suit torn, but he looked like a vengeful god. He saw the gun. He didn't stop. Lucas turned the gun on Marcus. "Stay back!" Marcus closed the distance in 2 strides. He slapped the gun out of Lucas's hand like it was a toy. Then, with a right hook that sounded like a sledgehammer hitting meat, he punched Lucas in the face. Lucas crumpled to the floor, unconscious before he hit the carpet. Sarah dropped the IV pole and rushed to Arthur. "Arthur! Arthur! Can you hear me?" The old man was gasping, soaked in saline and sweat. He looked at Sarah. He looked at Marcus. And then Arthur Sterling started to laugh. It was a weak, rattling wheeze, but it was laughter. "You," Arthur coughed, "you made a mess of my carpet." Sarah burst into tears and hugged him. "You cranky old bat, you're alive." Sirens wailed in the distance. The police were coming. The scandal of the Sterling estate attempted murder dominated the Chicago news for weeks. Lucas Sterling was arrested and charged with attempted murder, fraud, and embezzlement. It turned out he had been siphoning money from the company for years to pay off gambling debts. With the new will in evidence and Sarah's testimony, his defense crumbled. He was sentenced to 25 years in federal prison. Arthur Sterling spent a month in the hospital. He was weak, his heart damaged by the stress, but his mind remained sharp as a razor. On the day he was discharged, he didn't go back to the empty mansion. He asked to go to the Obsidian Room. The restaurant was closed for lunch, but Pierre, who had narrowly avoided charges by turning state's witness against Lucas, opened it just for them. Arthur sat at table 9 in his wheelchair. Sarah sat across from him. Marcus stood guard by the door, now wearing a much nicer suit. "The steak is tough," Arthur complained, poking at his filet mignon. "It's perfect, and you know it," Sarah said, sipping her iced tea. "Stop complaining, or I'll tell the nurse to take away your salt." Arthur grunted, but his eyes were warm. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a folded document. "I need you to sign this," he said. "I already signed the witness statement," Sarah said. "This isn't a statement. It's a contract." Sarah picked it up. It was an employment contract. Role: personal liaison and estate manager. Salary: $250,000 per annum. Benefits: full medical coverage for the employee and immediate family. Sarah stared at the number. It was more money than she could imagine. "I can't accept this," Sarah said. "I'm a waitress. I'm studying to be a nurse." "You're a terrible waitress," Arthur said bluntly. "You dropped wine on my son. You broke glasses. You argued with the customer." He leaned forward. "But you are the only person in this city who told me the truth. You saw me, not the money. Me." Arthur's voice softened. "I am an old man, Sarah. I am dying. Maybe not today, maybe not next month. But soon. I don't want to die surrounded by sharks. I want to die knowing that someone actually gives a damn." Sarah looked at the medical coverage line. She thought of her father, who was currently safe in a private rehabilitation center, paid for by Arthur's emergency fund. "My dad," Sarah started. "Is taken care of," Arthur said, "whether you take the job or not. But I need you, Sarah. Who else is going to peel my asparagus correctly?" Sarah smiled. Tears pricked her eyes. She picked up the pen. "Fine," she said, "but one condition." "What?" "You have to say please and thank you to the staff. Every time." Arthur scowled. He looked like he had swallowed a lemon. "That is a ridiculous demand." "Take it or leave it," Sarah said, crossing her arms. Arthur sighed. He looked at Pierre, who was hovering nervously nearby. "Pierre," Arthur grumbled. "More water. Please." Pierre nearly dropped the pitcher. "Oh, of course, Monsieur Sterling." Arthur looked back at Sarah. "Happy?" "Thrilled," Sarah said. She signed the contract. Epilogue. Arthur Sterling lived for another 14 months. They were, by all accounts, the happiest months of his life. Sarah finished her nursing degree, studying in the library of the Sterling estate, while Arthur recounted stories of his business empire. She brought her father to visit on weekends. The two old men would play chess for hours while Sarah and Marcus watched from the porch. When Arthur passed away in his sleep, there was no scandal, no drama, just a peaceful end to a turbulent life. The reading of the will was brief. The majority of the billions went to the Stroke Recovery Foundation, as promised. But there was one final bequest. To Sarah Jenkins, the lawyer read, "I leave the Obsidian Room. The building, the land, and the business. You know how the service should be. Run it, and fire Pierre if he sweats too much." Sarah stood in the center of the restaurant the day she took ownership. She looked at table 9. It was empty. She walked over and placed a small brass plaque on the wall next to the booth, reserved for Arthur Sterling. The customer is not always right, but he was always family. "Table for 2?" a customer asked from the doorway. Sarah turned. She smiled, a genuine, warm smile. "Right this way," she said, "and be careful with the wine. We have a strict policy about kindness here." Sarah Jenkins didn't just survive the rude millionaire, she saved his soul. In a world where everyone bowed down to Arthur's money, Sarah stood up for his humanity. She proved that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is look a monster in the eye and see the lonely man underneath. Arthur left Sarah a fortune, But she gave him something worth far more: a peaceful end. So I have to ask you, if you were in Sarah's shoes, broke, desperate, and terrified, would you have risked your life to save a man who treated you like dirt? Or would you have walked away? Let me know your answer in the comments below. If you enjoyed this story of justice, betrayal, and redemption, please smash that like button. It really helps the channel. And don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell so you never miss a twist. Until next time, stay safe.